The first time I noticed, I thought it was a coincidence. 11:40 on a Tuesday, and 3 of my neighbors were in the hallway at the same time. Miriam from 714 with a white kitchen bag, Dean from 709 carrying a collapsed Amazon box, and the woman from 702, whose name I still didn't know, holding a small grocery sack tied at the top. The trash room is at the end of the hall past the elevator. Door with a push bar, 2 chutes, a recycling bin, nothing remarkable. But all 3 of them were there at the same time, and they were hurrying. Not running, not panicked, but moving with the specific unself-conscious efficiency of people catching a deadline, the way you walk when the post office closes in 4 minutes and you can see the door. Dean held the trash room door for Miriam. Miriam held it for 702. They filed in bags went down the chute, and they filed out, and Dean checked his watch as the door swung shut, and it was 11:43. I was standing at my door with my keys out. I'd just gotten home. Dean nodded at me. Miriam said goodnight. 702 didn't look up. I went inside, ate leftover pad thai, answered 2 emails from a client in Lyon about a medical device manual I was translating, and at 12:15 I took my trash out. The hallway was empty. The trash room was empty. The chutes were the same chutes. The recycling bin was the same bin. The overhead fluorescent buzzed the way it always buzzed. Nothing was different, but the room was cold. Not building cold, not draft cold. Cold the way a room gets when a window has been open for an hour in January and just been closed. The air holding the memory of moving air, still faintly circulating, even though nothing was open. The trash room on the 7th floor of a 1971 concrete mid-rise in northeast Baltimore does not have windows. It has a vent. The vent was closed. I checked because I check things. I'm a translator. My entire profession is noticing when something that looks right is slightly wrong. I threw my bag down the chute and went to bed, and I thought nothing of it for 6 days. The following Monday, I was up late finishing a rush job. It's a French pharmaceutical patent, dense and fussy, the kind of work that puts me in a trance until 1 or 2 in the morning. At 11:35, I heard doors. 3, 4, maybe 5 doors, opening and closing in the hallway within a 2-minute span. Footsteps moving in one direction. The push bar on the trash room door, its distinctive metal thunk, then footsteps returning. Doors closing. By 11:45, the silence. I took my trash out at 12:30. The room was cold again. Same cold. That open window in winter cold without a window. The 3rd week, I started paying attention. Not investigating. I want to be clear about that. I was not investigating. I was a person who works late and lives alone and has the kind of quiet, detail-oriented mind that translating cultivates, and I was noticing a pattern because the pattern was there. Every night. Every single night. Between 11:15 and 11:50, the residents of the 7th floor took their trash out. Not all of them, not every night, but enough of them on a rotating basis that by the end of my 3rd month on the floor, I had seen every occupied unit. There are 14, 2 are vacant. Send someone to the trash room before midnight at least twice a week. No one took trash out after midnight. I did, regularly, because my schedule runs late, and because the pattern wasn't yet a rule in my mind, just an observation. And every time I entered the trash room after midnight, it was cold, and every time I entered it before midnight, it was not. I mentioned the cold to the building super in February. His name is Gus. He's a 60-year-old man with a bad knee and an efficient, no-nonsense manner that I associate with people who have been asked to fix things that aren't broken by tenants who need attention more than maintenance. He said he'd check the vent. He checked the vent. He said it was fine. It's cold in there at night, I said. After midnight? The specificity of his question stopped me. Yes, I said. He looked at me the way you look at someone who has found the edge of something you were hoping they wouldn't find. Not afraid. Assessing. He said, "The 7th floor handles it themselves. They've been handling it a long time. You're new." "I've been here 5 months." "That's new." He didn't say anything else. I stood in the lobby and I understood that I had been told something in the negative space around his words, and I understood that pressing him would close the door that his careful non-answer had left ajar, and I went back upstairs. I knocked on Miriam's door that evening. Miriam is 71. She's lived on the 7th floor for 19 years. She has a miniature schnauzer named Pepper, who I sometimes hear clicking down the hallway in the mornings, where she opened the door and smiled and invited me in and gave me tea in a cup with a saucer, and we talked about the weather and her daughter in Towson and my work, which she found genuinely interesting. She asked real questions about how translation works, which almost no one does. And after 30 minutes, I said, "Miriam, why does everyone take their trash out before midnight?" Her face didn't change. That was the thing that told me this was real. Her face didn't change because the question wasn't a surprise. She had been waiting for it. Maybe not tonight, but she had been waiting. "Because after midnight, the room is being used," she said. "By who?" "By what's been here longer than us." She said this the way she said everything, plainly, without drama, with the practical tone of a woman describing where the laundry machines are. She told me that when she moved in 2006, the woman in 714 before her, a retired school teacher named Dolores, had explained it on her 3rd day. Not her 1st day, not her 2nd, her 3rd. There was, Miriam said, a protocol for telling new residents. You waited until they'd been there long enough to notice the pattern themselves. If they noticed and asked, you told them. If they never noticed, you didn't. What happens if you never tell them? Nothing. They take their trash out whenever they want, and nothing happens to them. It isn't polite. Polite to who? She put her cup down. To what use is the room? I asked her to describe it. She said she couldn't because she'd never seen it. No one on the floor had ever seen it. The rule. She didn't call it a rule. She called it the courtesy. Was that you took your trash out before midnight, and after midnight you didn't go into the trash room until morning. Because after midnight the room was occupied and you don't walk into an occupied room. What is it doing in there? I don't know. I've never asked. In 19 years? You've never asked? Netta. She used my name with weight. In 19 years, this floor has never had a break-in, a fire, a flood, a pest problem, a violent incident, or a medical emergency. The elevator on this floor has never broken down. The hallway lights have never gone out. Pepper has never been sick. I don't know what's in the trash room after midnight, and I don't need to know. I take my trash out by 11:30, and I leave the room alone. And in the morning, the room is a room again. That's the arrangement. I went home and I sat with that word. Arrangement. It implied negotiation, terms, two parties who had agreed on something, but when I replayed what she said, there was no moment of agreement she described. No meeting, no covenant. Just a practice, inherited tenant by tenant, maintained through the simple mechanism of someone telling you on your 3rd day and you deciding based on 19 years of safety in a cold room that the courtesy was worth extending. I want to tell you that I left it alone. I want to tell you that I heard a 71-year-old woman describe a functional arrangement and I respected it. I am a translator. My job is to take someone else's meaning and render it faithfully in a language they didn't write in. And the cardinal rule of my profession is that you do not improve the original. Sark, you do not add clarity the author didn't intend. You do not resolve ambiguity the author left open. You serve the text. I did not serve the text. On a Thursday in early March, I set an alarm for 12:10. I put on socks and a sweatshirt, and I walked to the end of the hallway, and I stood outside the trash room door and I listened. Nothing. No sound. The hallway was silent, and the door was a door, and the fluorescent above it was buzzing its usual buzz. And I stood there for 5 minutes, hearing absolutely nothing. I pushed the bar. The room was cold, but I knew it would be cold. The cold was not the new thing. The new thing was that the room was smaller. Not dramatically, not architecturally. The walls were where they'd always been. The chutes were in the same position. The recycling bin was against the same wall. But the space between me and the far wall felt compressed, as if the air itself had a density it didn't have during the day, as if the room was full of something that took up volume without taking up space. I stood in the doorway and I couldn't make myself step inside. Not because I was afraid, because it would have been rude. That's the word my body chose. Not dangerous, not wrong. Rude. Like walking into someone's bedroom while they're sleeping, like opening a door without knocking when you can hear someone on the other side. I let the door close. I stood in the hallway. My heart was beating hard, but my breathing was even, and what I felt was not dread, but embarrassment. The specific hot discomfort of having intruded. I went back to my apartment and I sat on my bed and I thought about Miriam's word. Arrangement? And I thought about the cold and the compression and the feeling in my body that said rude. And I understood something that I think is important, which is that the feeling did not come from outside me. Nothing projected it. Nothing made me feel it. I felt it because it was the correct thing to feel when you open a door that someone else is behind. And whatever was in that room was enough of someone that my body recognized the social grammar of intrusion without being told. I didn't go back. Not that night, but I started talking to my neighbors. Not about the trash room, about the floor, about how long they'd been here, how they liked it, what they noticed. I talked to Dean, who's been here 11 years and works as a systems administrator at Johns Hopkins and is the kind of precise, unsentimental person who wouldn't tolerate an irrational belief for 1 hour, let alone 11 years. I talked to Camille in 702, who's been here 6 years and is a physical therapist and who turned out to be warm and funny and had simply been reserved with me because she said, "We wait to see if people notice." Everyone I talked to told me essentially the same story. They'd moved in. They'd noticed the pattern. They'd asked or been told on their third day if they seemed like the kind of person who would notice. They'd been skeptical. They'd extended the courtesy anyway because it cost nothing. You just take your trash out before midnight, which is what most people do regardless. And over time, they'd noticed what Miriam noticed. The floor worked. Not in a magical, dramatic way, like in the way that a well-maintained building works. Things that break in other parts of the building didn't break here. 7th floor had the lowest maintenance request rate in the building. Gus confirmed this when I asked, and then gave me that look again. "Does it happen on other floors?" I asked him. "No." "Why the 7th floor?" "It was here before the building came to it." He said this and then he fixed the drip in my kitchen faucet and left. I need to tell you what happened in April because April is when I broke the arrangement. And I need you to understand that I did not break it out of recklessness or bravery or disbelief. I broke it because I am a translator and translator cannot leave a text unread. It is a compulsion that has defined my career and is not something I can turn off, and I know this about myself, and I went in anyway. April 9th, a Wednesday. I stayed up without the excuse of work. At 12:15, I walked to the trash room carrying a bag of trash I'd been holding since 11, and I pushed the bar, and I walked in. The cold wrapped me like water. The room was compressed in the way I'd felt before, but more. Standing inside it this time, fully inside, I could feel the compression on my skin, a uniform pressure that wasn't painful but was unmistakable, like being at the bottom of a deep pool. The fluorescent overhead was on, but the light wasn't reaching the corners the way it should. The corners were soft, not dark, soft, unfocused, as if the room's geometry was being gently held rather than rigidly built. I put the bag down next to the chute. I didn't put it in the chute because putting it in the chute felt, in that moment, like interrupting. I put it on the floor, the way you set something down on a table when you've entered a room where someone is working and you don't want to disturb them. And then I felt it. Not a presence, not a sound, not a temperature change beyond the cold that was already there. I felt regard. The room was aware that I was in it. Something in the room, something that was, in some sense I cannot articulate more precisely, the room, was aware that I was in it. And its awareness was not hostile and not welcoming. It was patient. It was the patience of something that has been here longer than the building and has an arrangement with the people in it and is now being visited outside the terms of that arrangement by someone who has not yet earned the right to visit. I said, "I'm sorry." I said it out loud, standing in a cold trash room at 12:20 in the morning in a concrete apartment building in Baltimore, and I meant it. The compression eased. Not completely, maybe 10%. Just enough that I could tell the easing was a response. I picked up my bag and put it down the chute, and I left, and I closed the door, and I went back to my apartment, and I sat at my kitchen table and I cried. And the crying was not from fear, and it was from the recognition that I had been living for 8 months on a floor that was cared for by something I didn't understand. And I had received that care without paying for it. And every other person on this floor had paid for it with the smallest currency imaginable. The simple act of not entering a room when someone else was using it. And I had refused to pay because I needed to know, and knowing was more important to me than courtesy. And that was something real and unflattering about who I am. I talked to Miriam the next day. I told her what I'd done. She wasn't angry. She was, the word I keep coming back to is tired. The specific tiredness of a person who has watched someone do the things she told them not to do, and now has to deal with what comes after. Did it change? I asked. The arrangement? Did I break it? You didn't break it. You strained it. It's different. How do you know? Because the hallway lights are still on. If you'd broken it, we'd know. She told me something then that she hadn't told me before. The trash room is the room it chose. Not the only room it could use. The room it chose because the trash room is the room humans think about least. It is the room where people go to leave things they don't want, and they leave quickly, and they don't linger, and they don't look around. It chose the room where it was least likely to be noticed, and it chose the hours when the room was least likely to be visited, and it set its terms at the absolute minimum of inconvenience. Don't come in after midnight, that's all. Just don't come in. And this was, Miriam said, just the gentlest possible way to coexist with 14 apartments full of people. And I had walked in anyway. What does it do? I asked. In the room, at night, what is it actually doing? She shook her head. I told you I've never asked. But you must have a theory. My theory is that it lives here, and we live here, and the room is its, and the hallway is ours, and the arrangement works. My theory is that not everything needs to be translated, Netta. She said my name again with that weight. And this time I heard what she was actually saying, which was not a metaphor. She was speaking to me specifically, to my specific compulsion, to the thing that makes me good at my job and difficult to live next to. She was saying, your need to understand is not a virtue here. Here it is the thing that risks everything. I went home and I sat with it for 3 days. And on the third day, I knocked on Dean's door and I asked him the question I should have asked at the beginning, which was not what is in the trash room, but how do I join the arrangement? He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, you don't join it, you just start doing it. You take your trash out before midnight and you don't go in after. That's it. There's no initiation. There's no ritual. You just respect the room. For how long? Miriam's been doing it for 19 years. And before Miriam? Dolores did it for 23 years. And before Dolores, someone else. It goes back to the building. And before the building? He paused. Gus says it was here first. I believe him. Not because I understand it, which is because Gus has been the super for 31 years, and this is the only floor he doesn't worry about. And if you'd maintained a building for 31 years and one floor just worked, you wouldn't question it either. So I started. That's the unspectacular truth. I started taking my trash out before midnight. Every night, regardless of my work schedule, regardless of whether I had trash. Some nights I carry an empty bag just to keep the practice. I walk to the trash room at 11:30 or 11:15, or sometimes 11:40 if I'm cutting it close, and I put my bag down the chute, and I walk back, and I don't go back until morning. It's May now. I've been doing it for 6 weeks, and I want to tell you what has changed, because something has, and it's not the trash room. My apartment is warmer. Not measurably. I haven't checked the thermostat, and I won't, because checking is the instinct I'm learning to leave alone. But the draft that used to come under my front door in the evenings has stopped. The kitchen faucet that Gus fixed in February and that had started dripping again in March has stopped dripping. The outlet in my bedroom that would sometimes lose connection if I bumped the plug. Solid now. Small things. Things that could be coincidence. Things that I am choosing deliberately, with full awareness of what I'm choosing, not to investigate. The hallway feels different to me now, and I think the difference is not the hallway but me. I used to walk to the elevator in the morning as a person passing through a corridor. Now I walk through it as a person who lives somewhere. And the somewhere has terms, and I am meeting them, and the meeting is the membership. Camille from 702 invited me to dinner last week. First time. We ate pasta and drank wine. And she told me about her ex-husband. And I told her about the patent I'm translating. And at one point, she said, casually without weight, "It's nice having you on the floor." I understood what she meant. She didn't mean it was nice having me as a neighbor. She meant it was nice that I had become part of the arrangement, that I had stopped trying to read the room and had started simply being in it. Last night, I took my trash out at 11:20. Dean was in the hallway. He nodded, I nodded. The trash room was a trash room. Fluorescent buzz, metal chutes, recycling bin against the far wall. Ordinary, warm. It's always warm before midnight. I put my bag down the chute and I turned to leave and I paused. Not because something happened, because I wanted to say something, and the thing I wanted to say was thank you, and I didn't know if that was part of the arrangement or a violation of it. I didn't know if speaking to the room before midnight was an intrusion on hours that belonged to me, or an offering that would be received, or just a woman talking to a wall. I didn't know, and the not knowing sat in my chest like a stone, and I stood there for maybe 5 seconds weighing it. I said nothing. I left. I closed the door, and walking back to my apartment, I passed the hallway window that looks out over the parking lot and the street beyond it, and the May air was coming through the cracked pane, and it smelled like cut grass and warm asphalt. And the light from the street lamp was the particular orange sodium light that Baltimore uses. And I thought, I live here. Not in the building. On this floor. In this specific arrangement between 14 apartments and one room, and something I will never see and never understand and never translate. This morning I walked to the elevator and the hallway light was on, the way it is always on, and the carpet was clean, and Pepper was clicking somewhere behind Miriam's door, and the trash room door was closed, and the push bar was cool to the touch. I touched it without thinking, just my fingers brushing it as I passed. And behind the door was nothing. A room. Chutes and a bin and a fluorescent light. Whatever is there at night was not there now. Or was there in resting. Or was there, and simply not something that exists in a way that daylight reveals. I took the elevator down. I walked outside. The sun was up and it was 63 degrees, and there was a breeze that moved the leaves on the one sad maple the building keeps in its concrete planter by the entrance. And I stood on the sidewalk and I felt the sun on my arms. And I felt nothing extra. No protection, no augmentation, no invisible hand on my shoulder. Just the sun and my skin, and the specific warmth of a May morning in a city where I live on a floor where I have finally learned the only thing I needed to learn, which is that not every room is mine to enter, and not every text is mine to read. And the deepest form of belonging I have ever experienced asks nothing of me but the willingness to close a door at the same time every night and trust that what's behind it is not my business, and that this is not ignorance, and it is not cowardice. It is the rent. I pay it gladly. I pay it every night. I will pay it for as long as I live here, which, if the arrangement holds, if I hold, may be a very long time. Miriam has been here 19 years. The floor takes care of its own. I am its own now. I don't know what that means. I don't need to know. The trash room is at the end of the hall. The door is closed. It's 11:14, and I have a bag, and I'm going now, and I'll be back before the hour turns, and I will close the door behind me, and I will walk to my apartment, and I will not look back, and the hallway light will be on in the morning. It is always on in the morning.